Hey people and peopleettes, Tears of the Kingdom has been out for a few months now, and since Nintendo's announced that there won't be any new DLC for the game, we're all kind of wondering what's next. Still a little skeptical on the no DLC thing because I just don't trust Nintendo. But let's say that is the truth. We're not getting DLC. What can we expect for the next Zelda game? Well, let's break this thing down and talk about what I think will absolutely be in the next installment and what I think absolutely will not. Plus, some things that I think would be really cool if they did put in there. So let's first stop and talk about what I think will absolutely be in the game. Maybe this is a crazy one to come out the gate with, but I think the Triforce is coming back. I kind of feel like story itself will make a return to the Zelda franchise. And what I mean by that is not that Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild didn't have story, or like some people say, they're not true Zeldas, but Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild have definitely been more gameplay focused than they have been story focused, which has made for some really fun long sessions of gameplay that just end up in this loophole of me just randomly doing absolutely nothing for hours, but I'm having fun doing it. And I am a story guy, but I understand how important gameplay is. I mean, if you don't enjoy the gameplay, why play it? But now I feel that the Zelda team has a good grasp on the kind of gameplay that they're going to use for the next few games, and they could focus on a much deeper story. I think the story is going to be bigger, it's going to be more in depth, and for some reason in my gut, I just feel like they're going to bring the Triforce back. The Triforce is a big part of the Zelda games and is one of the most powerful relics in the Zeldaverse. I know that a huge complaint for fans is that the Triforce has been completely absent for the last couple of games, and despite what people think, Nintendo does listen to what fans want. I mean, people complained about Wind Waker's cartoony look, and then we got Twilight Princess. We know they haven't forgotten its existence because it's still in the world of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, we see it in the structures and the buildings and all the different things that's scattered throughout Hyrule, even shields and things. And in Breath of the Wild, you actually see it on the back of Zelda's hand. And whatever your theory is about that being on the back of her hand, it wasn't like they accidentally placed that in there. They were like, oops, I accidentally put this golden 3 triangles that stack exactly like the Triforce on the back of her hand. That just didn't happen. So yeah, I think the Triforce is coming back. Kind of along with deeper story, but Triforce specifically. Another thing that I think we're going to get is temples and bosses improved again. And yes, I said again, they were definitely improved from Breath of the Wild, at least in my opinion. I would much rather play through the temples than the Divine Beasts, and I'd rather fight any Tears of the Kingdom boss than any of the Blights. But I think we still need to take a few more steps to get where we need to be. I think the temples should be bigger, I think there should be more to them, and you shouldn't also have pretty much the same gimmick from one to the next. I think the size of the Fire Temple in Tears of the Kingdom would be a good starter dungeon, but it's not even just about sizes, because we've had small dungeons in the past that were very memorable. A lot of it has to do with how the temple is progressed through and how the puzzles go through the temple. Now, the bosses based on cosmetics alone were so much better in Tears of the Kingdom than in Breath of the Wild, but the bosses could have been way more difficult. I mean, at least give the bosses more ways to attack. For the love of God, don't make the second phase exactly the same as the first phase, except now we're going to throw tornadoes at you that more than likely won't even hit you. Yes, I am looking at you, Kagura. However, I don't think that we'll turn to the same exact format that they had before Breath of the Wild for temples. You know, with a map, compass, 17 keys, a mini-boss, and an item that you have to beat the boss at the end. I think instead they'll keep a similar format to the temples that they had in Tears of the Kingdom. They'll just make them more interesting and give them a little bit more difference from one another than we had in Tears of the Kingdom. I actually like the setup that they give of like a challenge or a mini boss before you get to the actual temple, kind of like the monster on top of the volcano in Death Mountain before the Fire Temple. I just need that mini boss to actually be challenging and not feel kind of like a really terrible interactive cutscene. But yeah, I think we're going to get stronger bosses and better temples. Next up is going to be present cutscenes. You know, cutscenes that are actually happening in the moment, not a bunch of memories from the past. And I know how that setup makes it a little bit better for a game where you want total freedom, because everything already happened, so you don't have to worry about things being in a particular order to make sense of the story. You just found this part of the past before you found this other part of the past. But even though Tears of the Kingdom was in the past, I still found myself wanting to watch it in chronological order. I think you can make the story to where it doesn't necessarily need to be in chronological order for certain parts of it, and then whenever it does need to be in order, you don't let those things be accessible until the other things are accomplished before that. And to be honest, I think that everyone is kind of done with the memories, and I feel like that is kind of felt through the fandom. Everyone, I think, enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom and thought it was nice, but I think we all have that same complaint that we're kind of done with that. Of course, you could still have watchable cutscenes that are in the pause menu. They'll just pop up after they happen to you in present time instead of popping up after you figure out what happened in the past. Number 4 on the list of things that I think are going to be there are upgrading weapons will be back, but maybe not exactly the same as Fuse. Now, they could take it in a direction of just like the classic blacksmith from other games, but I really don't feel like Nintendo will do that. They could do something where it's like a blacksmith does the fusing for you, like you take him a monster horn and a weapon and he fuses them together until you're able to do it yourself. Or it could be an ability for us once again. I mean, that wouldn't be the first time the Zelda team repurposed an item. I mean, how many times did we get the freaking hook shot? Which I also hope somehow makes it back at some point in the future. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Fuse maybe in different forms, maybe in different ways, but be kind of a staple for the next few Zelda games in some way, shape, or form. And number 5 that I think will actually return is kind of a similar art style. I think after the last 3 big console games, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom have had this kind of Wind Waker, Twilight Princess look. I think they're going to keep that, and I think it's going to stick around for a little while. It just seems to be working well with what they're wanting to do. Kind of a cartoony, cel-shaded kind of thing, but not to the extent of Wind Waker. So I do think that'll stay. I just think that they'll change the design of the character, kind of like the difference between Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild, to whatever in the world they want next. Also, just kind of an honorable mention of a random prediction I think is happening. Link will wake up in the beginning of the game. That I'm going to say that's going to be there. And so those are the things that I think will be in the game. But what about the things that I don't think will be in the game? Well, let's talk about those. I know people want it, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but a system where we get a new weapon to beat the boss midway through a temple, I just don't think it's coming back. At least not that same exact way anytime soon. I think we're going to kind of stick with being able to get various melee weapons and bows throughout the games, which you can actually grab, pick up, and get anywhere in the world from the very beginning of the game. You just got to find them. Even boomerangs. I think that's going to stay kind of the same. Just based on your location or where you're looking, you can find more powerful weapons as you progress through the game. Now, one thing I will mention that they did a little bit more similar to that style than Breath of the Wild did is you got the sage abilities before the boss fights instead of after like you did in Breath of the Wild. You know, Urbosa's Fury, you didn't get until after Thunderblight. The only thing is the older games made it to where you either needed those weapons to beat the boss or it was just highly suggested for the most part to beat the boss that way. And you really can beat most of the bosses without the sages in this game. I think we could do a little bit of a hybrid of things where the ability makes it way easier to get through the temple and to beat the boss. Something like Rivali's Gale, you get it halfway through the temple or before the temple because the temple actually has a lot of heights and depths that you have to like adjust really fast on that make it a lot easier. And the boss, even the same, can jump from one location to the next and you only have a few seconds to get up there, shoot it with the bow, and then drop back down. Something to that effect, kind of a hybrid of things, but I don't think we're going back to you can't progress through this half of the temple without a fire rod, so you beat the first half of the temple, fight a mini boss, get a fire rod, so on and so on. Another thing that I don't think is going to come back is that the linear story is forced. I think that there will be some parts of the story that could be linear, kind of like you have to get the 4 sages before you get the 5th sage in Tears of the Kingdom. But I think the team, for the most part, wants to keep the story just completely wide open the way that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are. They may have a suggested route. They've had that in both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Whether that be for the ease of gameplay or maybe it just makes more sense to go this way linearly. But I think for the next foreseeable future, it's going to be you beat the tutorial and you can go straight to the boss, as long as you can find them. And the third thing that I just don't think is going to happen, sadly, is Ganondorf. I just don't expect him to be there. I mean, it has happened where we have went back to back with Ganondorf on main console titles with Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, but I just don't see it happening. I think just because we've had Calamity Ganon, we've had Ganon for the last 10 years, that's kind of been our enemy. I think that they'll kind of go a different direction. Maybe someone who's trying to revive Ganon, maybe trying to revive the Demon King. I think there is a chance, even if it is small, that Ganon's there in a different form other than Ganondorf or the Calamity. Could be more like our pig friend that we always see in so many of the other Zelda games. But I just don't believe that we'll see Ganondorf in the next game. I think it'll be 2 or 3 more games before we actually see him again, which I hate because I actually love the Gerudo form of Ganondorf. The humanoid side of him makes it just really fun and enjoyable, and usually has, for the most part, a little bit more depth to him than the other iterations of him. But hopefully I'm wrong about this one. Now, we've discussed what I think will be there and what I think won't be there. I just want to touch real quick on a few things that I really hope would be there and I think would be really cool to be there. First of all, I want Zelda to be playable. I know you're tired of hearing it, but We all want it, don't we? I mean, please give us a playable Zelda. I mean, there's a million ways to do it, whether it's just for a little portion of the game, whether it's a joined thing where her and Link go on an adventure together, which I think could definitely be a thing that could be fun. I mean, they could do it where she's only playable in certain parts, then Link's only playable in certain parts, then they meet up, and then you can switch between them, but just let her be playable. But if not her being playable, please at least let her be an NPC that we can interact with. And let that be for most of the game, if not all of it. I mean, in Tears of the Kingdom, you can walk up to all of the other main characters and have a conversation with them. Sidon, Yunobo, Tulin, Riju, Pura, even Teba from Breath of the Wild, who's not even really that much of a focus in Tears of the Kingdom, you can have a conversation with. But you can only talk to Zelda in the first 15 minutes of the game and the last 5, and most of all of that is cutscene. I mean, I feel like we've moved away kind of from the damsel in distress. I mean, Zelda in Tears of the Kingdom isn't necessarily a damsel in distress. She's kind of like just in the past, and you kind of just got to fix things that were done to her and done to the world. But like, she's not necessarily in constant danger, trapped behind some bar somewhere. She's out in the world, but can we just be with her in it? Next thing I want, a bigger world. Like, increase the size of the world like they did with Breath of the Wild to Tears of the Kingdom, but instead of going down, make it wider. I'm not saying we can't have like a depths or any form of that, but you know, just make more of Hyrule to explore. I also think that if they made the depths a little bit more interesting with civilization in some way, I could see that still working, going down instead of wider. But that's kind of why I want this bigger world. You may ask, why would we need a bigger world? What are you going to do with it? Put more people, put more cities in it. One of the most massive disappointments for me in Tears of the Kingdom was not getting some of these cities, some of these ruins rebuilt. I wanted there to be so badly a rebuilt castle town, even if we did kind of a Terry town thing to do it, just a big city. I wanted the ranch to be rebuilt. And so in the next game, even if we don't have a part in rebuilding them, let there be way more people, way more NPCs to interact with, because it just feels like the world is so massive in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and it's amazing, but I want to talk to more people. I want to encounter more people. Give us a castle town like we had in Ocarina of Time, but to the scale of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Give us shops, restaurants, places with clothes, places with food, markets, blacksmiths, inns, stables, whatever. I don't care if we have freaking barbers and everyone's going in and getting random haircuts. Just like, let there be more there. I'd love to see Beetle traveling in between places. I mean, he's always walking in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and he always is everywhere. He's somehow faster than us. He's like that guy, the running man from Ocarina of Time. But anyways, let's make all of the settlements bigger, like the Zora's Domain, Goron City, Gerudo Town, even the Koroks. Let's give us bigger cities and bigger towns for these people. Let's just see that these places are at a time of flourishing. And I understand that the world needs to be in danger somehow, but it can be a world that's alive already in danger and not a world that's basically already seen death and hasn't healed for 100 years kind of thing. Also with that, I hope we keep the Sky Islands, but put more cities and civilizations on those. Put the Rito up there. Maybe even give us the Zonai, which we'll talk more about in a second. But just don't let them be dormant and empty Sky Islands. Let there be something going on up there. Because I think they're a great concept. They've been in 2 games now, so make them part of the Zelda lore. They can always be part of those worlds for every game here on out. But let's make them more enjoyable and have more depth to them. I've really said depth a lot in this video. I guess we just need more depth. Now back to the Zonai. I want them to be there. I want them to be a civilization up in the sky and maybe be like a flourishing, bigger civilization. Maybe they went into hiding or something. Maybe they just didn't trust humanity for some reason for years or whatever. I just want more lore about this race of people. I want more of their connection, past connection and present connection to Hyrule. I want to know just more about them and learn more about their race. I really hope that they are actually going to be a new staple race for the Zelda series. I mean, we at least know there's more than Rauru and Minoru because Sonia and Rauru had to have some child to be Zelda's ancestor. But yeah, give me some more Zonai love, please. And finally, the last thing that I want is underwater exploration. I mean, for the love of Hylia, please give me underwater exploration. And not just like traveling under the water, get into the temple and you're on the surface. I want to travel underwater for massive extents of time. You get this tunic, you're somehow able to walk on the bottom of the ocean floors, but it's like to the size of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, and you could explore those waters like you can the surface area in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, give me a water temple where I have to be in the water most of the time for the temple and even fight the boss underwater. We haven't had this. It feels like forever. I mean, Skyward Sword essentially is forever ago. I mean, it's been well over a decade, but it just feels like something is missing. Like, I feel like other people are like, where's the Triforce? Where's this at? And like, I get that. I miss that. But I need that underwater exploration. I need it and I want it and I have to have it. So please, Nintendo, please give me underwater exploration. I mean, wouldn't it be so cool to have Zora chilling out underwater and you can actually talk underwater with them? And they're giving you side quests underwater and you're achieving stuff underwater and doing fetch quests underwater. Like, I just want underwater exploration. That's all I'm saying. But what do you guys think? Do you completely agree with the things I said would and wouldn't be in the game, or do you completely disagree? Let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know some things that you would want in the game as well, even if it's just kind of far-fetched. But thank you guys for checking out this video. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're trying to get to 200 subscribers before Thanksgiving. If we do, I will probably do some kind of stream where I'm dressed up like a turkey. But thank you guys, and I appreciate you. And if you want to know what the most underrated Zelda game is, check out this video right here.